Welcome to our channel, Book by Book. Today we're diving into, well, a real cornerstone of business thinking. It's Jim Collins and Jerry Porras' 1994 classic, Built to Last. Successful Habits of Visionary Companies. Our goal here is to really pull apart that core framework they found, the one that helps companies last not just years, but generations.
Yeah, and that distinction is absolutely critical. We're not just talking about quick wins or, the latest startup buzz. This is about deep, enduring success. Companies like 3M, Disney, HP, IBM. These are organizations that have seen it all, right? Economic shifts, tech revolutions, new leaders, and they're still at the top of their game.
Okay, so let's dig into that. Collins and Porras had this really fundamental question driving their research, which took them, what, 6 years?
6 years, yeah.
What?
A massive undertaking.
And the question was simple but profound. What makes these truly visionary companies so different from their competitors? The way they answered it, that's key.
Oh, absolutely. The methodology is really the powerhouse behind the book's conclusions, because they didn't just, look at a bunch of successful companies on their own. They picked 18 of these visionary companies.
Okay.
And then, and this is the clever part, they found a direct comparison company for each one. Same industry, started about the same time, similar opportunities early on, but just didn't achieve that same kind of lasting, iconic success.
Right. That comparison method is where the gold is, isn't it? It kind of strips away the general stuff like, yeah, both probably had decent marketing or hired smart people, and it zeroes in on the unique things, the habits, the mindset that only the visionary companies had.
Precisely. It isolates the differentiating factors. And getting labeled visionary wasn't easy. They had really strict criteria.
Like what?
Well, a company had to be a premier player in its industry, widely admired by its peers. It needed to have survived multiple generations of leaders, so the founder was long gone, proving it wasn't just one person's genius.
Built to outlast individuals.
Exactly. And maybe most importantly, it had to have navigated several big product or service life cycles, so no relying on just one initial hit product.
Okay, got it. So after all that rigorous comparative work, what did they find? What's the core blueprint for building something that lasts?
It really boils down to two fundamental pillars, and they're intertwined. Enduring companies, the visionary ones, they understand they're not built on just one killer product or a single great idea. They're built on, first, this incredibly strong, almost sacred core ideology. That's their fundamental purpose, their core values. It doesn't change.
Okay, the unchanging core.
And second, they have this relentless, almost aggressive stimulation of progress. They're constantly pushing for innovation, for change, for adaptation, for improvement.
So that's the tension, right? That sounds like a contradiction.
Yeah.
Stability and constant change. We're usually told you have to pick one. Be stable or be agile.
And that's the magic. Visionary companies just refuse that either choice. Collins and Porras call it the genius of the A&D. They somehow manage to be deeply conservative about their core beliefs, their ideology, and simultaneously be incredibly bold, even radical, in how they operate, how they innovate, how they pursue goals.
Consistent and creative.
Yeah.
Stable and dynamic.
Exactly. And why this matters so much, especially for you listening right now, is huge. In today's world, everything feels like it's constantly being disrupted, right? This framework argues that your most reliable anchor, your best strategic asset, is your constant identity, your core purpose. If you truly know who you are, fundamentally, then you can adapt what you do, your strategies, your products, your markets, without losing your way, without losing your soul, essentially.
Whereas the comparison companies, maybe they didn't have that anchor.
Often, yeah. They might chase the latest market trend or jump at a new opportunity without that grounding philosophy. They mistook tactics for identity. The visionary companies understood that a strong identity doesn't prevent evolution. It actually guides it in a meaningful way, rather than just reacting.
Okay, this is fascinating. Now, the book also does some serious myth-busting early on, right?
Yeah.
About what we think makes great companies great.
Oh, definitely. Two big ones get knocked down pretty quickly. First, the myth that you absolutely need a brilliant, game-changing idea right from the start.
Right, the aha moment.
And second, the myth that you need that larger-than-life, charismatic leader, the Steve Jobs type, to kick things off.
So that wasn't the case for these visionary companies.
Surprisingly often, no. The research showed many visionary companies started with, frankly, pretty ordinary ideas, sometimes opportunistic, sometimes even evolving out of a previous failure. And their founders, often they were competent, deeply committed to the values, sure, but they were quieter, more like meticulous architects building something solid. Collins and Porras call them clock builders, not flashy time tellers.
Okay, clock building versus time telling. That feels like a really central concept here. If it wasn't the amazing initial idea or the superstar leader, what were they focused on building?
They poured their energy into building the organization itself. That's the clock building part. Not relying on one person's brilliance or today's hot product that's just time telling, reading the current time off the clock. Instead, they focused on creating the enduring systems, the structures, the culture, the processes, the mechanism that could keep ticking, keep producing success long after they were gone.
So the organization is the ultimate creation. The ability to keep innovating is more important than any single innovation.
You've got it. Their greatest invention wasn't, say, the Post-it note. It was the 3M system that could invent things like the Post-it note over and over again.
And to do that, they had to be really clear about what stays the same and what needs to change.
Absolutely critical. They drew a super clear line in the sand between their core ideology and their envisioned future.
Okay, let's break that down. Core ideology, that's the fixed part.
That's the bedrock. It's who the company is at its deepest level, what it stands for. It has two components, usually 3 to 5 absolutely core, non-negotiable values. These are intrinsic beliefs, not just rules written down somewhere. And a core purpose, the fundamental reason the organization exists beyond just making money. That purpose should ideally last for, 50 years or more.
And it's not a strategy, you said.
No, it's more like a constitution. It's the standard everything else is measured against. Now contrast that with the envisioned future. That part is dynamic, exciting, always changing. This is where you find the audacious goals, the big projects, the missions that galvanize the company. As goals are met, new ones are set. The core ideology is timeless. The envisioned future is constantly being renewed.
Got it. So that clarity, knowing what's sacred and untouchable versus what's dynamic and needs pushing, that's how they manage the genius of the A&D, being both stable and progressive.
Exactly right. And with that framework in mind, we can really dive into the 6 specific practical lessons that set these visionary companies apart from the comparison group. This is where the rubber meets the road.
All right, let's do it. Lesson 1, clock building, not time telling. We've touched on the analogy, but how do they actually build the clock? What does that look like in practice?
Well, think about the comparison companies. They often had good leaders, good products for a time, but their success was often tied too tightly to maybe the founder's personality or the current hit product line. When that leader left, or the market shifted away from that product,
Things started to wobble.
exactly. The visionary companies, though, they focused on building what the authors call organizational architecture. They designed systems that basically baked the core ideology into the company's DNA.
Okay, architecture, what does that include?
Things like really rigorous succession planning, often promoting from within because those people already get the culture. Highly developed training programs that weren't just about skills, but about deeply indoctrinating new hires into the core values. Even compensation structures rewarding long-term value creation, not just hitting quarterly numbers. Think about HP. They didn't just design cool gadgets. They designed the HP way, an entire environment, an ethos that ensured innovation kept happening no matter who was in charge of a specific project.
That really brings it home for anyone listening. The acid test for being a clock builder is, if you or the current star leader or the best-selling product suddenly vanished tomorrow, would the organization, the culture, the engine itself keep running effectively? Comparison companies often failed that test. Too reliant on one person, one product. The visionary companies made the institution the star.
Well put. Okay, moving to lesson 2, which is the practical application of that genius of the A&D. Preserve the core, stimulate progress. This isn't just a nice idea, it's a constant balancing act they actively managed.
But doesn't that create, organizational whiplash? Trying to be super conservative and super innovative at the same time, wouldn't that just confuse people or lead to internal conflict?
That is the challenge, isn't it? And that's precisely where the visionary companies outperform their peers. The comparison companies often fell into one of 2 traps. Either they'd see a new trend and ditch their core identity to chase it.
Opportunistic, but losing their way.
Right. Or they'd become so rigid, so focused on preserving the past exactly as it was, that they just stopped innovating altogether and got left behind. The visionary companies used their core ideology as the anchor that allowed them to pursue progress confidently, not as something that held them back.
Okay, can you give an example? How did a company actually manage that tension day to day?
3M is a classic example. Their core ideology is deeply rooted in Innovation, individual initiative, entrepreneurship. That's the unchanging core. Now, to preserve that core, they had to build systems that actively stimulated progress aligned with it. The famous 15% time rule is a perfect illustration.
Where researchers could spend 15% of their time on their own pet projects.
Exactly. No management approval needed, just go explore. That rule stimulated the kind of progress, bottom-up innovation, unexpected breakthroughs like Post-it notes, that reinforced their core value of individual initiative. The purpose fostering innovation stayed constant, but the means of stimulating it, the 15% rule, the culture of experimentation kept generating new results. The core isn't static, it actually fuels the dynamism.
I see. So the core values dictate the kind of progress you should be stimulating. If your core is, say, unrivaled customer service, you'd stimulate progress by constantly building better service systems, training, tools.
Precisely. If your core is pushing scientific boundaries, you build R&D labs and encourage experimentation. The progress isn't random. It's channeled by the enduring purpose. It's like that tree analogy they use.
Oh, yeah.
The deep roots, that's the core ideology anchoring the company through storms. But it's constantly growing new branches, new leaves. That's the stimulation of progress, reaching for the future. You need both. Strong roots without growth means stagnation. Lots of growth without roots means you get blown over easily.
That's a great visual. Okay, lesson 3. This one always feels a bit counterintuitive, especially today. More than profits.
Yeah, this one definitely rubs against the grain of modern shareholder-first thinking. What Collins and Porras found very clearly in their research was that for these enduringly great companies, profit was consistently seen as essential, yes, but as a result or an enabler of their activities, not the fundamental reason for their existence.
So if it wasn't maximizing profit, what was the point? What was driving them?
It was almost always something bigger, something rooted in that core ideology. It could be about service, like Nordstrom, or innovation, like 3M or Sony, or quality, like Merck aimed for. Or even just making people happy, like Disney's original vision. Profit was like oxygen, you know. You absolutely need it to live, but it's not the purpose of living.
And the kicker is, the data actually showed these purpose-driven companies massively outperformed the comparison companies financially in the long run, right?
Significantly. Often by huge multiples in terms of total stock return over decades. It seems counterintuitive, but it makes sense when you think about motivation and resilience. A deep sense of purpose inspires commitment, loyalty, and a willingness to weather tough times in a way that just chasing the next dollar figure can't.
Yeah, there's that quote they use, something about the scoreboard.
Right. If profit is the scorecard, purpose is the game being played. If you only focus on the scoreboard, you forget how to play. When things got tough, the comparison companies often cut corners on quality or R&D to prop up short-term numbers. The visionary companies tended to double down on their purpose, which ultimately built more long-term value.
Okay, that leads nicely into lesson 4, which gave us a term everyone seems to use now.
Mm.
Big, hairy, audacious goals, or BHAGs.
Ah, yes, the BHAG. This is firmly on the stimulate progress side of the equation. BHAGs are these incredibly bold, clear, compelling goals, often quantitative, but always unifying. They pull the entire organization forward, forcing it out of just making small, incremental improvement.
What makes a BHAG different from just, like, setting ambitious targets for the year?
The timescale and the sheer audacity. A BHAG is usually way out there 10, 20, even 30 years. And it's so big, so challenging that when you first hear it, it might seem almost impossible. It forces the company to fundamentally rethink its capabilities, its resources, its entire approach. Think about Boeing, way back when, deciding they would become the dominant player in commercial aviation and betting the company on the 707 jetliner. That wasn't just, let's sell more planes next year.
Right. Or Sony's early goal. Wasn't it something like wanting to overcome the global perception that Japanese products were low quality?
Exactly. Or Ford aiming to democratize the automobile. These weren't just business objectives, they were crusades. They give profound meaning to the day-to-day work and rally everyone towards a common, almost heroic endpoint.
They have to really connect with the core ideology too, right?
Absolutely. A BHAG must feel authentic to the company's purpose. But it also has to be scary enough, audacious enough to, as the book says, stretch the soul of the organization. It ensures that the stimulate progress side isn't just tinkering around the edges. It's driving major leaps forward. It provides that clear finish line, even if it's miles away.
Okay, on to lesson 5. This one sounds intense. Cult-like culture. That word cult has some baggage. How did they frame that?
Yeah, they acknowledged the negative connotations for sure, but they used cult-like to describe something very specific. An organization with incredibly strong shared beliefs derived from the core ideology. It means intense alignment, maybe even a bit of fanaticism about the company's values and purpose. It's about creating a place where people are deeply indoctrinated into the way things are done, where there's a powerful sense of belonging if you fit.
And presumably a clear sense that you don't belong if you don't fit.
Exactly. It acts as a powerful sorting mechanism. These companies weren't trying to be all things to all people. They fostered cultures that were distinct, demanding, and required real commitment to the core values.
So it's less about brainwashing and more about extreme cultural cohesion.
Precisely. And a key part of this was how they hired and promoted. They prioritized hiring for fit with the core values, often above specific skills or experience. They figured they could teach skills, but they couldn't easily teach values. If someone didn't fundamentally align with the ideology, they believed that person would eventually weaken the organization, no matter how talented they were.
Whereas the comparison companies were maybe more comfortable,
It-
less demanding culturally.
Often, yes. The book describes some comparison cultures as being like country clubs, pleasant, accommodating, but lacking that tight-knit, shared sense of purpose and intensity. That diffusion allowed inconsistency to creep in, which hurt them in the long run.
So the implication is, if you can't genuinely buy into and live the core values, you probably won't thrive there, even if you're brilliant. It creates this really unified, powerful engine where everyone's pulling in the same direction based on shared beliefs. Like a top sports team or military unit, the shared ethos is everything.
That cohesion is what enables bold action.
No.
When everyone implicitly understands the rules of the game, the core ideology, you don't need layers of bureaucracy or constant oversight. People can innovate and make decisions confidently within those understood boundaries.
Okay, that makes sense. And finally, lesson 6, which really drives that progress engine. Try a lot of stuff and keep what works.
Right. This speaks to the experimental nature of the visionary companies. They weren't just master planners, they were master experimenters. They seemed to understand implicitly that the world is just too complex and unpredictable to figure everything out in advance from the top down.
So instead of betting the farm on one big grain strategy,
They fostered an environment where lots of things were being tried, often in decentralized ways. Small experiments, pilot projects, parallel initiatives. They weren't afraid to let teams explore different paths.
but it wasn't just chaos, right? The second part is key. Keep what works. How did they make sure the good ideas stuck and spread?
That's the crucial discipline. They were systematic about learning and integration. When an experiment succeeded, whether it was a new product, a new process, a new management technique, they didn't just pat themselves on the back. They actively analyzed why it worked and then institutionalized it. They wove the successful mutation into the company's DNA, scaling it up, teaching it, making it part of the clock.
Like HP again, encouraging those internal ventures and R&D projects.
Exactly. They built a culture where trying things was encouraged and learning from both successes and failures was part of the process. Comparison companies, on the other hand, often got stuck defending one successful formula for too long, or they punished failure so harshly that nobody wanted to risk trying anything new. The visionary companies embraced a kind of internal guided evolution.
Like organizational natural selection almost. Try many variations, amplify the fittest, and keep evolving. Don't just rest on your laurels.
Continuous evolution, driven by experimentation but always anchored by the core. To preserve who they were, they had to be willing to constantly change what they did, the non-core stuff like products, strategies, structures.
Okay, those 6 lessons paint a really clear picture of what set these visionary companies apart. Now, the big question for everyone listening. How do we actually use this? How can you take this blueprint and apply it to build your own enduring success, whether that's in your company, your team, or even your personal career?
Right, let's make it really practical. This is about translating these big ideas into concrete actions, starting right at the foundation, that core ideology.
Okay, actionable item number 1. Define your foundation today. Seriously, if you haven't done this, sit down and articulate it. What are your 3 to 5 absolutely non-negotiable core values? And what's your enduring purpose statement? Why do you exist beyond making money? Write them down. This becomes your compass. And remember, these need to be stable, authentic things you'd hold true regardless of the market.
And flowing from that, actionable item 2. Set a BHAG that aligns with your core. Think big, think long-term, maybe 10 years out. What's a huge, audacious goal that genuinely excites you and aligns with that purpose you just defined? It needs to be daunting enough that it forces you to grow, to change how you operate, not just work a bit harder. Make it a rallying cry.
Okay, foundation set. Next up is creating that alignment, getting the people and culture right, like in lesson 5.
Yep. Actionable item 3. Be ruthless about alignment over convenience. Look hard at how you hire, who you promote. Are you really screening for people who deeply resonate with your core values? It's tempting to hire the person with the perfect resume, even if they feel culturally off. Resist that. Prioritize value fit. You're building a cohesive team, not just collecting talent. Weakening the culture for short-term gain is a bad trade.
And it's not enough just to hire the right people. Actionable item 4. Embed the culture consciously. Don't leave culture to chance. What are the stories you tell? What rituals do you have? How does your training reinforce the values? Look at your symbols, your physical space, your daily practices. Are they actively reinforcing your core ideology? If not, consciously design them so they do. Make the values visible and tangible every day.
Then we get to the nitty-gritty of actually building the mechanism, the clock itself. This means looking inward.
So, actionable item 5. Audit your systems for longevity. Take a hard look at your key processes. How do you plan succession? How do you fund new ideas? How do you handle crises? Are these processes dependent on the skills or whims of the current leader? Or are they robust, institutionalized systems that would work even if the key people changed? If it relies on one person, you're still time-telling. You need processes that outlast people that's clock building.
And link that to experimentation. Actionable item 6. Institutionalize experimentation. Don't wait for the perfect grand plan. Actively encourage and resource small bets. Give teams the time, the budget, the permission to try new things, the try a lot of stuff part. But crucially, build clear feedback loops and processes to quickly identify winners, learn from failures, and systematically scale up the successful experiments.
Yeah.
Make innovation a repeatable process, not just random sparks.
Finally, this all requires a certain mindset from leadership, right? Thinking beyond just the next quarter.
Absolutely. Actionable item 7. Lead for the long haul, even when it's hard. You will face pressure for short-term results that might tempt you to compromise your core values or long-term investments. You have to actively resist that. Focus on building enduring value. Use metrics beyond just profit. Look at employee morale, customer satisfaction, cultural health to gauge true, sustainable success.
And it's never done. Actionable item 8. Commit to continuous renewal. Building something to last isn't a one-time project. You need to keep sharpening the saw. Schedule regular, maybe annual or biannual, deep reviews. Revisit your core ideology to ensure it's still understood and lived. Check the health of your culture. Assess progress towards your BHAG, and set new goals for stimulating progress. Keep pushing, keep evolving intentionally.
You know, this book, Built to Last, it's so much more than just a collection of business case studies. It really offers a fundamental blueprint for resilience, for building something meaningful that endures. The core message is powerful. True greatness isn't really about finding the next genius leader or stumbling upon the next killer product.
It's about the hard work of building the machine.
Exactly. Building the organizational machine, nurturing that strong, purpose-driven culture, and then having the discipline and courage to relentlessly evolve and improve year after year, decade after decade.
The real challenge it throws down, I think, is asking us to shift our whole perspective.
Yeah.
To stop focusing only on what can I do right now to get a quick win? And start asking, what kind of foundation can I build today? What kind of clock can I construct so that the positive impact continues long after I'm gone? That's the ultimate test, isn't it? The legacy you leave.
That's the heart of it. And if you remember just 2 things from this whole discussion, let it be those core principles. First, focus on clock building, not time telling. Build the system, not just rely on the moment. And second, master the genius of the A&D. Preserve the core ideology while simultaneously stimulating progress. Hold fast to who you are while aggressively pushing towards who you can become.
Powerful stuff. If building something truly enduring is your goal, whether it's a company or even just your own career's impact, then the ideas in Built to Last feel, well, absolutely essential. We really hope this summary has given you some valuable, actionable insights into building that kind of lasting success. If you found this discussion helpful, we'd be really grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel, Book by Book, for more summaries like this. And, please do share it with others who might find it useful and give it, that really does motivate us to keep digging into these great books and bringing you the best summaries we can.